What is up, Armchair Fandom maniacs? This is the Real Last Jedi. I want to welcome you back to another uh, broadcast on Armchair Fandom. It's been a while since we had a show that we've uploaded or any content that we've released. Uh, had a lot of very busy November, December, and January. My dad passed away, and then we had the holidays that went on, and then in January I tested positive for COVID. But the whole time I was brainstorming, wanted to start getting content released and start getting busy with the channel and the group. And so I basically just brainstormed and came up with a way that we can get out content more consistently without it being a hassle and without it'd be more easy to be faithful to get the content out. So I hope you enjoy our content because there'll be more of it being released. Just go to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube, sign up for an Armchair Fandom, you sign up for a YouTube account, and then look for our channel, Armchair Fandom. Subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so that you be notified each time we release new content. You can also find us on Facebook at our Facebook group, Armchair Fandom, and you can find us on Twitter at armchair_fandom. If you like our videos, make sure you leave comments in the comments section below and click the like button on our videos so that YouTube will know to suggest our videos to other people. With all that said, today we're going to be covering the MCU. It's a project that started back in 2008 that's ongoing. Basically, what happened is the gist of it, for those of you not in the loop or doesn't understand what the MCU is, in whatever year it was, I'm not sure exactly, Disney bought the rights to the Marvel movie properties. Uh, with some exceptions, there's characters and properties that they don't own that belong to other companies, but by and large, they bought all the movie rights to the Marvel properties. And in 2008, the first Marvel movie, Iron Man, came out. And basically, for the last 14 years, they've been releasing new movies and new television shows that tell one story. All the shows and movies intermingle with each other and belong to one continuity. So basically, today's show, we're going to be bringing you up to date. It's a lot of content covering at least 21, 23 movies now, I think, roughly, and 5 or 6 television shows. So this will be a longer video, but we're going to actually try to keep it to 30 minutes or less. So try to keep up. And let's get started. But before we do, let me bring in my guest, Ashley Houchins, otherwise known as Darth Pane. Me and him's been round and round the last 30 minutes trying to figure out our audio. Hopefully it's working now.
Testing. Greetings from the hallowed halls of Korriban.
Oh man, this has been this hasn't gone the way I thought it would, but I do think recording
Trying to
our
train
episode.
Sith hounds is easier than this.
Yeah, but this is going to be an easier way for us to do this. After we record each episode, I can go in iMovie and edit and add our intros and all that stuff, and I think it'll be a lot smoother. Uh, but we had to iron out some kinks. Something's happening. We would get in the stream and talk for a few minutes and plan out what we were going to discuss, and then I would remove him from the stream so that I could bring him in later. And every time I would do that and bring him back in, his audio would be messed up. So we've come up with a workaround on how to work around that. I'm not going to bring him in now until we're ready to talk. He's trying to play mind tricks on me, but he don't understand that I'm more powerful than that. They don't work on me. They only work on the weak-minded. which reminds me, one of our episodes this week we'll be talking about Boba Fett, the series, the book of Boba Fett. I don't want to get it too much more into it in this episode, but it'll be part of my continuing discussion on does it still suck, a Star Wars story. That's a continuous story that's still going on today. Is does it still suck? Star Wars was awesome until the Rise of Skywalker. Uh,
No, it was awesome until The Force Awakens.
no, it was awesome until the Rise of Skywalker.
No,
They
then The Last Jedi killed it.
Well, the Last Jedi killed it, but I didn't realize it until I watched the Rise of Skywalker. That's another discussion.
Mm.
Uh, but let's get started on this, Ashley. The MCU. I know you're a big, huge MCU fan.
No, I never
Uh,
heard of it.
Before we get started, Armchair Fandom is a different take for me on what you hear some channels refer to as normies. Uh, I'm definitely in the normie category. I don't know the lore behind all this, the source material behind all the movie properties that I like. I like movies, and I'm not a big reader. I don't like devoting all the time that it takes to have reading as a hobby. I feel like I'm sacrificing way too much time. So I like those people that take the stories that I like, adapt it, and put it on the big screen. And I love hearing stories done in the visual form. But I know you've read a lot of comics, so you're like my uh, source for the comic material when we were talking about the MCU, and you read a lot more Star Wars books and comics than I do. So, getting started, we're going to talk about the MCU today. We're going to try to do this in under 30 minutes, which is going to be a challenge,
Good luck.
considering how many properties they've released. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to go in chronological order. I'm going to mention the movie in the timeline release that it came out in, and then I'm going to let you follow up with a 20 or 30-second take on it. So, this is not the timeline that Disney released the movies. For example, Iron Man was the first movie released by Disney in 2008. I went to the theater and seen that. I didn't realize that that was leading into this massive continuity called the MCU when I went and seen it. I liked it. It was a superhero movie, which I'm always at the theater to see those. But then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We all know it culminated with Endgame, finishing the Infinity Saga. Uh, but as far as chronologically, the story that actually takes place first in the MCU, and once I mention this movie, we're just going to move through them as fast as possible. In timeline order, the first property was actually Captain America, the first Avenger. And I have to say, the entire Infinity Saga, Captain America is my favorite character. I believe the entire Infinity Saga basically tells his story, his and Tony Stark's stories, and because of the Infinity Saga and how it all ended, Captain America is my favorite character. And the reason I like Captain America, two quick bullet points, is getting beat up by the bullies in the alley, Bucky coming to his rescue. He can't get in the army. He takes the super soldier serum, and the rest is history. But I can do this all day. That's all I have to say about Captain America. What about you?
I like Captain. I never liked Captain America the comic book. I always thought the character was very generic. But Chris Evans, from his great job he did as the Human Torch in the Fox Fantastic Four movies, really brought the character to life. And I think he was a very integral character, obviously, for the MCU. And I really enjoyed watching his portrayal of the character. The movies were all good, all three of them.
Yeah. The next release in order. I never watched this show. I knew it was out. I don't know if you've seen it or would suggest that I go back and watch it, which is actually officially part of the MCU, is Agent Carter. Peggy Carter was Steve Rogers, Captain America's love interest in the first movie. He had to abandon her and everybody else to sacrifice himself to save the world from the Nazis and Hydra, which was part of the first movie. I've never watched it. I don't know if it's any good. Have you seen it? What do you think
I've
about it?
seen all the episodes. It's a good show, but I wouldn't consider it integral or very important in the overall scheme of things in the MCU. It has a few nuggets and Easter eggs, but you could skip it.
Yeah, okay. The next in timeline order would have been Captain Marvel, which actually didn't come out until very late in the series of movies. It came out just before Endgame. It came out between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. I heard somebody last night give a great example of what this character is right now. It's just a shoehorned character. You can go watch the Captain Marvel movie. It's not that bad, but it feels like a shoehorned character. Even in the movie Endgame, they just basically, she's only in it at the beginning and at the end. She feels shoehorned just so that she can be in there.
Well, the Captain Marvel character, one I grew up with, was actually Walter Lawson, was the original Captain Marvel, not Carol Danvers. The movie, the more you watch it, it's very watchable, and Brie Larson does a good job. But overall, I think her character was introduced kind of late, and I think they've been trying to fit a square peg into a circle, so to speak, trying to get her integrated there. I think hopefully they'll get better as they go along.
Yeah. Next in the timeline order was actually the first movie released, and that was Iron Man, the story of Tony Stark, a playboy billionaire who gets captured by terrorists, and he's got a serious heart injury. He has to invent something, or a doctor, a scientist, kidnapped by the terrorists with him, helps him come up with a contraption to keep shrapnel from entering his heart, basically. And he invents this suit that helps him get away from the terrorists. And over time, because he actually works in the arms industry. He just continuously makes the suit better and better and better over time. And he has a change of heart because of his experience in the cave. And he begins to start trying to protect Earth instead of only creating weapons to destroy it with. Go ahead.
Well, the character evolution of Tony Stark, as we go along, the movies will be further shown, but really it was a great way to introduce that character, one that I didn't really enjoy reading about growing up. A friend of mine did, but I tell you, RDJ's portrayal of him and the fact that he really, you just seen him grow, and the fact that, there was more to this guy than just a suit of armor. It really was very enjoyable, and it really set the stage for what was to come afterwards.
Yeah. One of my favorite aspects of the MCU, the first 21 movies, was the opposite stories that it told between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. They were basically the same character, but they were different sides of the coin, so to speak. They kind of met in the middle. Steve Rogers made his sacrifice early on and then got to go back and live. Tony Stark lived and then made his sacrifice without jumping ahead too far. But that was one aspect of their two characters that I really enjoyed. The next movie in the timeline order would have been Iron Man 2. I don't remember a lot about Iron Man 2. I know it had uh, uh, what's the Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke was in it. I don't remember a lot about the plot. Go ahead.
Mickey Rourke played the character Ivan Vanko, who was the villain known as Whiplash. Again, not a character I was familiar with from reading about, but again, Mickey Rourke's a good actor. I think the villain was kind of one of the more weaker villains in the MCU's overall. But again, Iron Man, it set the stage for what was coming afterwards. You got to see Tony Stark evolve more, and it just really, you got the thing about this movie that really was the key to me was the fact that it showed you the relationship between him and his dad. It started showing you how much his dad really thought of him, and you see that payoff later off in Endgame.
Yeah. Okay, the next movie in well, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've never seen this. I didn't even know it was on Disney Plus. It's a Disney Plus one shot. We don't have to talk about this. It says a funny thing happened on the way to Thor's hammer. Uh, it's got something to do with Agent. What's his name?
Colson,
Agent
Colson.
Coulson. I haven't seen that. Have you seen it?
I've seen them all, and him and Jasper Sitwell. It was okay, but like Agent Carter, you can skip it.
Yeah. And then the next one after that would have been Thor, the first Thor movie, played by Chris Hemsworth. Yeah, the Thor movies, man. Everybody complained about the first and the second one. The first one was pretty well received.
More
Thor,
complained about the second than the first.
yeah, they really complained about the second one. But before we jump, I don't want to jump ahead, man, and get ahead of ourselves. What did you think about the first Thor? I really liked it. I went to the theater and seen it and watched it in 3D. I thought the visuals were amazing in it.
I never went to the theater and saw it, but I got it, and that was one of the first MCU movies I saw. And it was always one of my favorite characters, still my favorite character in Marvel Comics now. And just Chris Hemsworth's portrayal was phenomenal. Tom Hiddleston, phenomenal. Anthony Hopkins is Odin. I mean, it was a killer cast. The music was great. Kenneth Branagh, phenomenal English director. I mean, what a way to set the stage of talking about Asgardian lore into that movie. It was just excellent. I'd give it 4 stars for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people dismiss these movies because they're based on the comic books. Uh, but I mean, you can't attract better actors than Anthony Hopkins. I
Right.
mean, he's considered one of the best. And like you said, he played Odin, and this was just an introduction to Thor, the God of Thunder, and his brother Loki, the mischievous Loki, and it really starts. The movie introduces you to the dynamics of their relationship that continues to play out going forward. But the next thing after that in the timeline order is another one shot called Consultant. Uh, is that just basically something you can skip?
Most one shots you can skip. They're okay to fill in gaps and stuff if you're kind of bored looking for content, but not critical.
Yeah. But after that, I'll never forget going to the theater to see this movie. Uh, we were at a little league baseball field watching my nephews play baseball, and trying to get my brother to go to a movie to see anything was like trying to pull teeth. He just won't do it unless he decides he wants to go see a movie. It's very rare that you get him to go with you to see anything. So we were there that day, and I was planning on seeing this anyways. And he just up and asked if we all wanted to go see it. He was just wanting, because he had 3 little boys. It was something he knew they would like. He was wanting to do the family thing and take them. But it was me, my brother, my 3 nephews, my wife. We all went and seen it together. Had some great moments, and that was the first Avengers, where the entire cast comes together. You have Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Thor. Who am I missing here? Anybody? Black
Black
Widow.
Widow, yeah.
They're all together. Their New York City's under attack. Loki, the brother of Thor, is behind it all. Great movie. What's your take?
I was probably the first MCU movie I actually went and saw in the theaters was the first Avengers, believe it or not. And once I saw it, I was hooked. I got back and watched all the previous movies prior to that, believe it or not. Started going forward with it. I mean, how could you not? I mean, excellent people, just great portrayal, great story. Sam Jackson, very underrated as Nick Fury. I mean, what tremendous. I mean, you can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, before we move forward, let me throw something in there. All these Marvel movies, something that they have made popular that a lot of franchises are doing now is the post credit scenes. They're the ones that started doing this on a regular occasion. It's in every one of their movies. Some of them are important, some of them are just throwaways. But if you stay through the credits on every MCU movie, you're likely to get a nugget that you need going forward,
Right?
which is something very unique to the MCU. Another thing after that is another one shot, item 47. I'm going through the list on Disney Plus, but after Avengers, in timeline order, the next movie was Thor: The Dark World. I'll let you take this one.
Well, Thor: The Dark World had good music, and the worst thing about the movie was the villain. Malekith is a big villain in the comic books, and like I don't know Christopher Eccleston from Adam, but I didn't think his portrayal of the character was very good. It wasn't very believable, and that's what hurt the movie. Everything else was fine with it, but I mean, I enjoyed the movie, but that was one that Marvel got exposed for having what they would always get hit with later is the fact that a lot of the villains are weak, and Malekith in the movie was not good, not a very good villain. Loki was better as a villain. He was clearly the anti-hero of the movie. He stole the show like he always does. And now again, I think it was better than some movie people want to give it credit for. But again, it was coming off the Avengers. Everybody wanted to see what happened to Loki, and that's what basically this movie helped push forward going on afterwards.
Yeah. Remind me real quick. I've marathoned all these movies within weeks of each other, going into Infinity War and Endgame. Remind me a little bit about the plot of Thor: The Dark World.
Thor: The Dark World basically centered around the fact that one of the you started seeing the when you talked about the end of the first Avengers movie. When I saw that everybody didn't know who the purple guy was, I knew who the purple guy was because I read the comic books. It was Thanos, and I knew what Thanos was after the Infinity Gauntlet. Well, what they did was in Thor: The Dark World, they were talking about those Infinity Stones, and the one they were concentrating on was the Reality Stone. Malekith wanted to take the Reality Stone and turn the universe back to the whole thing of darkness again. And the whole plot of the movie was Thor trying to secure the Reality Stone and make sure it was put in safekeeping. And that's basically what the movie was. The main plot of it was.
Yeah. Which the Stones come up play a very important part later on.
Right.
Uh, you Another thing the post credit scenes played an important role in was showing you some of that stuff. What the all the movies playing together in one continuity was leading up to. So I mean, you would get little sneak peeks at different characters. Some of the Stones would show up in post credit scenes, and the comic fans knew where it was going. People like me, the normies, had to just wait for the next movie and just wait and see what the story was. But the comic readers basically knew it wouldn't be exactly like the comics, but they knew they was doing an adaptation of the Infinity Saga.
That's the key right there. We knew it wouldn't be dead the same because if it's dead the same, there's no suspense. But we kind of had the direction where they were going. That's a good thing.
Um, all hell, well, no, after Thor: The Dark World, you got Iron Man 3, where Tony Stark tries to create an all intelligent being, basically to protect Earth. Am I right on that? No, that's
Iron Man
Avengers.
3 was the extremis with the Mandarin, bait and switch.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
of Age of Ultron.
yeah. I'm thinking of the second Avengers.
Right.
Go ahead, take that one. Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3 basically is where Tony Stark's basically going through PTSD from where he
Yeah,
was in the first Avengers movie, and so basically, a character from his past, Aldrich Killian, considered himself to be the Mandarins, tried to set up these soldiers that could basically have these really extreme powers and stuff, and it took him and his buddy Rhodey to bring them down. But the real key to that was not so much that, but was the fact that they set the groundwork for a later MCU movie, Shang-Chi, but saying this is the Mandarin. And one of those one shots showed that was not the real Mandarin. I'm not an Iron Man reader, but I had heard the Mandarin was a big time villain in his comic, and they basically showed out later who that was going to be.
uh, well, we'll get to that later. Uh, the one shot you're talking about, I'm sure, is the next one. All hail the king. What was his name? Slattery. Ben
Trevor
Kingsley.
Slattery,
How does Ben Kingsley play such a worthless character?
because Ben Kingsley's a phenomenal actor and he can play any character. That's why you get it. That's like Anthony Hopkins. He can play any character. Ben Kingsley is acting royalty. He can play anything you want.
Why would he pick that role? The guy's basically just a joke.
Probably to show the depth of what he can do. And again, Trevor Slattery is not a character that I like, but I mean, again, Ben Kingsley makes you want to watch it just because he's doing it. He's a,
I
he's,
guess.
he's a scene stealer. He's a show stealer. If you give him enough deal, he'll steal the show.
I guess. The next one in timeline order was the next Captain America movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Uh, Chris Evans comes back. This movie is about the return of his friend from the first movie, Bucky, from the World War II era, which was another thing I liked about the first Captain America movie, is how it was a period piece that actually took place in the 1940s. Steve Rogers got froze in ice and woke up in current day, but his buddy from World War II, Bucky, basically the guy that was protecting him from the bullies before he became the super soldier in the back alley, is back. Steve thought he had died at the end of the first Captain America movie, but he shows back up as a super soldier himself, known as the Winter Soldier, I guess. Uh, and Basically, there's a whole plot going on with him and everything, and we find out a lot of the agents of Shield are working for Hydra. The Hydra never went away. My favorite scene in this movie is the elevator scene. I was laying at home. I didn't see this one in the theater. I was laying at home in the bed watching it on. I'd rented it, and when he does that in the elevator, man, I was cracking up because he watches all these guys get on the elevator. He keeps stopping at different floors. He watches them get on one at a time. He realizes what's going on, that they're ganging up on him. He says, "Before we get this started, does anybody want to get off?" That was great. But go ahead.
I liked it when Rumlow, who became Crossbones, tried to zap him with that thing. He said, "Cap, this is nothing personal." And after he knocked him out, he goes, "Kind of feels personal," because he got a whole about 30 people laying in the elevator all knocked out because he knocked them all out. But that was probably one of the first MCU movies that really got. It was, first of all, it was the directorial debut of the Russo brothers, and they're very good at what they do. But that was the first political thriller that really set it apart from some of the other Marvel movies, and you could just like, wow, this is a political sci-fi type deal. And that's what makes it stand out as far as all the other different movies. It really has that political thing going on in the background. Plus, you get Robert Redford to appear in this movie, an acting icon who said that he was going to make sure one of the last roles he did was in an MCU movie. That's pretty tall cotton there, sir.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about these movies is, uh, which after watching the MCU and finding out that Disney had bought Star Wars, I was so excited. I thought, Star Wars, you could take Star Wars and you could have a buddy cop movie set in the Star Wars galaxy. You could have a thriller set in the Star Wars galaxy. You could have a strict comedy set in the Star Wars galaxy, a horror movie set in the Star Wars galaxy. You do all these different genres, but they just take place in a different franchise, in a contained in a certain franchise. That's what the MCU does. Like you just said, the Winter Soldier is a political thriller, whereas like Guardians of the Galaxy is like a buddy cop sci-fi movie where all these crazy characters are hanging out together doing crazy stuff. And
That's
they
what happens
say,
when you have Kevin Feige is the president of one studios and Kathleen Kennedy's president of the others. Big
yeah,
difference.
yeah. But the next movie after Captain America, the Winter Soldier in timeline order was what I just mentioned. One of my favorite movies, uh, the first two back to back, was the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, man. I mean, you cannot beat the Guardians movies. Nobody's ever seen those movies, man. They should go watch them. Chris Pratt is good in this. I mean, what else do you
Michael
want out of a
Rooker and Yondu, my favorite character in the movies.
what else do you want in a sci-fi fantasy movie than a big dumb guy that can beat you up, a sarcastic '80s kid, a talking raccoon that everybody calls rabbit, fox, skunk, everything other than what he is, a tree that walks around and says one phrase, and only a few people can understand what he's actually saying, and a green chick that the Chris Pratt character has the hots for. I mean, They talk about
Great movie.
diversity in Hollywood. There's no more diverse cast than the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, I know. And if you recall, that's the first MCU movie that you and I went to. Me and you and Becky went to it because I had to get you. And you're like, man, I heard this movie better not be bad. I told you it's great, and you walked out there saying, boy, you were dead on. That movie was great, and it was. And my favorite character in the Guardians movies is, the shirt I'm wearing, Michael Rooker as Yondu.
Yeah,
He was really underrated, and I tell you what, Michael Rooker is a great actor, and he steals the show for me as Yondu. I mean, in both movies, because he really, and it's such a diverse cast. I mean, it's funny. The music's great. I mean, I don't know if
great,
there's another Marvel.
great soundtrack in both movies.
Yes, goodness sakes alive! I don't know if there's another Marvel movie that has a soundtrack that the Guardians. Both of them are just loaded with songs. It's great.
Yeah. Uh, since we're already talking about it, the second one in timeline order was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I liked Yondu a little better in the second one. Uh, I thought him and the dynamic between the fact that he supposedly had kidnapped Star Lord Peter uh, and Kurt Russell uh, as Peter's dad. Uh, I'm names are skipping my
Ego. He was Ego.
ego. I loved all that stuff, man. I thought that stuff was hilarious. When they're sitting around that fire after finding ego, and Drax says, uh, "I thought Yondu was your father." He's like, "Why would you think Yondu's my father? You guys
They look
look
exactly
exactly
alike.
alike."
He said, "One's blue."
One of them's blue, man. They don't look alike. Then he's like, "Why didn't you just leave?" He's like, "He threatened to eat me." Kurt Russell's like, "Oh, that SOB." I
Well,
love Kurt Russell, man. He pulls
I do
off
too.
comedy so well.
The funny thing about well, my favorite part in that movie is when Rocket and Yondu are on the Ravager ship and they get Groot to finally, Kraglin brings Yondu his fin. When he gets out of there and leaves that cell is my favorite part of that movie because he just tears all them guys that turned on him a new one. And the ironic thing about the character Ego, which again from Marvel is a living planet, if you look at the guy that played him, who's one of my all-time favorite actors, Kurt Russell, there's more polar opposite. He does not have the ego at all in his personality. He's as humble as they come, and I thought that was quite ironic that he would play that character. But he pulled the villain off really well. And again, the cast was just loaded. I mean, he had Sly Stallone with a bit role for crying out loud.
Yeah, yeah. Another great part is because Peter is this. He's got like this infatuation with '80s pop culture because his mom passed down stuff. He never knew his mom; she died when he was real little. So he knew her a little bit, but she gave him these mixtapes that he listened to all the time. So he was like attached to like '80s pop culture because of his mom. And the part where Yondu is floating down with that umbrella, and Peter's like, "You're like Mary Poppins."
Was he
He says,
cool? Oh
Was
yeah,
he
he's
cool?
cool.
Yeah, he was cool. Hey,
I'm
I'm
Mary
Mary
Poppins,
Poppins,
y'all.
y'all.
Loved it.
Great stuff, man.
I
But
know.
moving on, we can't talk about these forever. Guardians is great, man.
Yep.
After that, we come to Avengers Age of Ultron, which I actually liked. A lot of people didn't like it, but that's the one I confused with Iron Man 3, where Tony Stark tries to create a uh, computer algorithm basically that can protect planet Earth, and it ends up going bad and turning on him. And it's contained in a robot named Ultron, basically.
Yeah, I mean, of four Avengers movies, that's probably my least favorite of the four. Although I thought it was good. I think the thing with Ultron was in the comics, Ultron was created by Hank Pym, who we'll meet later if we talk about the Ant-Man movies, and Hank Pym was basically Ultron. But they did a good job of switching it around to where, James Spader did a good job as a voice, but I think basically Age of Ultron was just basically a vehicle that moved forward in the Infinity Saga. That's basically what it was used for, in my opinion.
That does bring us to the next one, Ant-Man, which I really like the Ant-Man movies. I like Paul Rudd.
I do
I
too.
think he's another casting decision they've made during the MCU process that just has been spot on. I love him. One of my favorite characters out of all of them, honestly. I mean, there's things about all the characters that I just love, but uh, uh, I don't know, man. I like Ant Man in the fact that he can. Go ahead, tell us what Ant Man's about.
Basically, Ant Man. Scott Lang again, who again I never read the Scott Lang Ant Man comics, and as far as Marvel goes, my my exposure to Ant Man centers around the fact that Michael Douglas, who plays Hank Pym, Hank Pym's the original Ant Man, who was part of the original Avengers group. So, but he was not in the first Avengers, obviously. But the thing about Ant Man is it's about this small time crook, Scott Lang, who's down on his luck trying to get back, to be a good dad to his daughter. And Michael Douglas needs him to help to keep his company from being taken over. Well, actually, it was taken over to a degree by this guy named Darren Cross, who is probably one of the more weaker villains in the MCU, along with Malekith. And it basically just centers around Scott and Hank coming to an understanding and them helping each other, and both of them rebuilding their relationships with their kids.
Yep. And yeah, that's another thing we was talking about earlier about each of these movies have a they're a different type of movie. The way Winter Soldier, Captain America, Winter Soldier was more of a political thriller. Uh, Ant Man is more of a buddy heist movie where he has the advantages of being able to shrink down real small to carry out bank robberies and stuff. You can just imagine if you can actually go into the vault and just unlock it because you're small as an ant. But yeah, Ant Man was really good. Part that comes to my mind is when the gigantic ant runs out of the house and that guy dude says, "Man, did you see that dog?" That guy just screams at the top of his lungs. He's like, "Man, that's a messed up dog."
I think probably the thing I think about when I think of the Ant Man movie is my oldest daughter Megan loves the fact that Michael Pena goes on that talking about everything that makes Michael Pena is really another character that's kind of steals the show in that movie, and letting him talk, just letting him go into all that whole trip of everything. It's must watch.
Yeah. Then after that, we got Captain America: Civil War, uh, which really tells the story that brings us to the point where these characters are when Thanos actually shows up. Uh, what happened in Avengers: Age of Ultron is in the process of saving everybody from Ultron, something happened in this town called Sokovia that ended up probably killing a lot of people. And the governments of the world want to bring the Avengers under some kind of treaty where they're governed and kept tabs on so that they don't get out of control. And of course, Tony Stark's for it because he's got, like you said, in Iron Man 3, he suffers from PTSD because of the events of the first Avengers movie. So he kind of supports the Sokovia, what's known as the Sokovia Accords, and Captain America, being more for freedom, is against it. So they end up having a falling out, disagreement about that. They end up fighting at the end of the movie, but you end up with two teams of heroes fighting each other in an epic airport scene. You have Captain America against Tony Stark, and then each of them have invited some friends along to try to uh, basically have a friendly discussion, which ends up being a friendly fight, which was a great scene. And we get introduced to Peter Parker's Spider Man, Tom Holland's Spider Man in this movie. Go
Yes,
ahead.
yes, we do. I was getting ready to say it's the intro, the MCU Spider-Man, and also the introduction of Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther. Now,
Yeah.
again, the Black Panther was not a character that I enjoyed reading about growing up. I thought it was kind of a boring character, but Chadwick Boseman made him interesting. And not only would you see in the movie that would follow, but he was a very good supporting character in this movie, and seeing his story fleshed out was really good. But the heart of the story again is always like you talked about earlier: Cap versus Steve, Cap versus Steve. And Thunderbolt Ross told Cap in the movie. He said, he said, "Did either of you guys know where Thor and Banner are?" And he goes, "No." He said, "Well, if I misplaced a couple of 30 megaton nukes, there'd be consequences."
Yeah. Yeah. We know where they are later. We see where they're at,
Yeah,
but
but of
we'll
course
get
he
to
didn't.
that here.
Neither
We'll
one of
get
them.
yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Captain America: Civil War is really good, man. It's the one that really starts to build and show you the ability, because when you're putting this many characters, I don't know why people always say this, but this movie's gonna be got too many characters in it. Well, the Russo brothers prove that you can have as many characters as you want to, as
If done
long as if you tell if it tells the right story. Story is number one, man,
right, that's
in
it.
any movie. If you got the right story, you can have 100 characters, man, and
That's exactly
it'll
right.
turn out. So the next movie after that in timeline order, which actually didn't come out until recently, was Black Widow. I really wasn't interested in this movie because I'd already seen how her story ends in Avengers Endgame, but I went and watched it. It wasn't bad, but I just really wasn't interested in it.
The thing I like, I think it was done too late. I'm glad they did it. But the thing I liked most about the movie was the fact that David Harbour's portrayal of Red Guardian, because if anybody's watched the Stranger Things show on Netflix, you know how good an actor David Harbour is. When I heard David Harbour was going to be in this movie, that got my attention, and he did not disappoint. The movie overall was pretty solid, but I was basically watching that to see what his story was, and it was a good movie.
One thing I don't like about Black Widow is the fact I feel like they, we'll get to this later, but they got rid of Black Widow, and I feel like they only made this movie to introduce somebody to play a different version of Black Widow, which showed up in the Hawkeye series. And
Yeah, I can see your point on that, but Florence Pugh's really good. I think she's going to do a good job, but I think they kind of needed to do that. So that didn't bother me that much.
I mean, I don't want them to get lazy. I would rather see them create new characters or bring in new characters that exist in the source material, rather than just take this character that they had to get rid of for story's sake and then just create a movie to say, hey, we got a new version of that character because we don't want to do anything too difficult and take our time. I mean, the MCU took what was it, 11 years to tell. I mean,
Yeah,
it's one of the best things that's ever came out of the movie industry. Why not just keep taking your time? You don't have to get in a hurry. Uh, After that timeline order, we had Black Panther. Like you said, Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. We're introduced to Wakanda. We're told how one becomes Black Panther. It's something that's passed down. His dad died, the king of Wakanda, so it ends up getting passed down to T'Challa, and we're introduced to his character and given his origin.
I thought that movie again. It was a cross. It almost reminded me almost of a bit of Coming to America meets James Bond, because you've got so much high tech stuff going on. And seeing Michael B. Jordan play the villain in that movie, I mean, he just really he was a strong villain. And it was Killmonger. I mean, he made Chadwick Boseman play his A game. But ironically, my favorite character of the Black Panther movie was M'Baka, the guy that led the Jabari. And I remember when he was hiding out, his mom and helping Chadwick Boseman get back to his health, and they got up there, and Martin Freeman was up there. He goes, "Well, I told you to be quiet, or else we will eat you." And they started laughing. Ah, no, I'm just kidding. That just shows you the depth of good actor that Winston Duke is, and I think you'll see him probably be the future Black Panther going forward.
Yeah. Then after that, we had Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, about Stephen
So good.
Strange, a surgeon who has an injury that damages his hands, so he can't be a surgeon anymore, and he has to go on this pilgrimage He ends up learning how to perfect the mystic arts and becomes a sorcerer. Ends up being the sorcerer supreme. He can manipulate space, time, and matter. One of my favorite characters, probably top five favorite characters. Well, they'd probably be different than you. I know they would be, but my probably my top three favorite characters in the MCU is Doctor Strange, Ant Man, and Captain America. Go ahead.
I would probably think, but I tell you what, I didn't read the Doctor Strange comic a lot growing up. I'm starting to read it now, and I tell you, it's Cumberbatch just killed it as Doctor Strange. I mean, my youngest daughter, Allison, she really loves Doctor Strange. She likes him and Hulk the most. But I tell you, my top three MCU characters would obviously be Thor, Loki, and Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange is that good, and I can't wait for the second one. I mean, he is such a good actor, and he really to take a character that really you have a hard time trying to like and making him likable, and the fact that he can go head round and round with RDJs you'll see in Infinity War, it's just I could watch them two exchange dialogue all day long.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. The fact that on Super Bowl Sunday they released the second trailer for the new Doctor Strange movie. It comes out in May. That's probably the one since Endgame that I'm probably actually hyped over. Everything else has just been uh, uh, something to tide me over until the next awesome property comes out. But Doctor Strange is really good. Uh, I would suggest it. I would suggest all of these. If you haven't never watched the MCU, you should set some time. You don't have to do it all in one night, man. Set not one night a week for the next 4 months and watch these in timeline order and get caught up. It tells a really great overall story when you're finally done with it. Uh, the next one after Doctor Strange was Thor Ragnarok. My wife was pregnant with our first baby when we went and seen this. We actually watched it in Princeton, West Virginia, at one of the worst theaters that I've been in probably since the Raleigh Cinema was open. And but I came out of the theater and I looked at her. I said, "That was so much fun, man." Sometimes movies don't have to be anything more than fun. Another movie I liked that was kind of like that was Jackie Chan's The Forbidden Kingdom. I mean, Jackie Chan movies, they're all the same basically. He just pulls off a bunch of crazy stunts and choreography. But I went and watched The Forbidden Kingdom and came out, man. I was like, that movie was nothing but fun. It was the same way with Thor Ragnarok, man. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but it was just pure fun. Go ahead.
Needless to say, being a Thor fan, that was my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite MCU movie of all, was Thor Ragnarok, and there was very little I had problem with in that movie. I mean, seeing Surtur come to life. I remember when I remember when I first saw the previews for it, and John Schnepp, when he was alive, got a looking at that. He said, "Did I just see Surtur on the trailer?" And when if you've read anything about Norse mythology, you know what Ragnarok stands for. Surtur's a big character in that, and the humor, the action. I mean, Taika Waititi. I mean, my goodness, he
We're introduced to Valkyrie. Taika
Valkyrie,
Waititi plays Korg.
Jeff
The
Goldblum as the Grandmaster. Are you kidding me?
it's got
Hilarious.
what's the Carl Urban?
Carl Urban as
This
Scourge. I mean, good night. That was
this
just
is
loaded.
Dez and Troy.
Well, the funny thing was, I remember when they first announced the movie, they were doing on the old AMC stuff, and they said, well, they'd cast Kate Blanchett in it. And they said, we don't know who she's going to play. Enchantress. John Schnepp looked at Campy and he said, you know what? I know exactly who she's playing. She's playing Hela. And you could tell by the look of Kate Blanchett, I knew that's who she was playing too. And she did a great job.
Yeah, yeah, she did a great job. She's a top notch actress. I mean, when you're getting people like Kate Blanchett and people like that to be in your movies, I mean, Martin Scorsese, that the old Hollywood crowd just should just get over it. These are these are actual works of art based on works of art. Anybody that scoffs at these movies just simply because they're based on comic books, I mean, they're just crippled too high for crutches, in my opinion. These are still stories that tell the stories of real human emotions. That's the thing about these characters, is they're humans in superhuman form, but they still have human emotions that usually they have to deal with while they're dealing with all the stuff they're dealing with as these superhuman characters.
Well, the funny thing about that movie was too is my youngest daughter loves the Hulk, and just seeing our two favorite characters battle against each other, that's just hilarious. It's just you just like back and forth, who's going to win? It's just like, come on, you got to be kidding me. What great cinema. And that was just again, I walked. The only thing I had a problem with it really was the fact that the Warriors 3 weren't around very long, and it could have been longer. I could use another 20 minutes of that movie. It was just great.
Yeah, my favorite, one of my favorite parts in it that comes to mind. I mean, we ain't even mentioned Jeff Goldblum's character.
No, I did.
Uh,
Grandmaster, I did.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the post credit scene with him was worth the whole movie. He's like, "Hey, nice revolution,
Nice
everybody."
revolution. Yay us. Yay us. Pat ourselves on the back.
But one of my favorite scenes is when Bruce is like, "Hey, you want to know who I am? You're getting ready to find out." And he takes a leap out of that plane and he just splats on that bridge. You're expecting he's going to turn into Hulk before he lands. He's just like splat.
I think my favorite part in that was like, you know, Thor tells Hela, he goes, "You've won, Hela. Asgard's yours." She goes, "I don't know what game you're playing, but you can't beat me." He goes, "You're right, I can't beat you, but he can." Turned around, Surtur just bursts up through the daggone pouch. She goes, "Oh no."
uh, the next one is Ant Man and the Wasp, the Ant Man sequel. I really like this one. This is I can't. I don't remember a lot about the plot. Maybe you can fill us in. The important part of this movie was the post-credit scene because we're really starting to. This is actually the movie right before Avengers: Infinity War, and this was in timeline order. But I believe it was released. When was it released?
I believe it was released after Infinity War, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So did we have two releases after Infinity War? Ant Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
so yeah, it would have to have been after Infinity War. They'd have been giving something away. But at the end of this movie, Scott Lang is sent into the quantum realm, and the static comes over his audio. He don't know what's going on, and then it flashes outside the quantum realm, and you realize Hank Pym and the other two characters have been dusted. They were turned into dust, so he was trapped in the quantum realm. Go ahead.
Well, the big thing of Ant Man and the Wasp was basically the whole plot of it was to find Janet Van Dyne, who was, Michael Douglas's wife, who was lost during one of their missions during the Cold War. And you mix in a little bit of Hydra being in there, partly there. I think they're associated to a degree. And then you have, of course, an old rival of Bill Foster, who was Michael Douglas's rival, who actually was Giant Man in the Avengers comics. The villain was basically Ghost, a girl named Ghost, who basically was trying to get this technology to try to help her get over an injury she had. But the cusp of the story was finding Janet Van Dyne. Again, the Ant-Man movies have always been about family. And I think that's what you see happen here. Once they are together, she helps her, and then they're working on trying to get more stuff out of the quantum realm when the post-credit scene you allude to takes place in Scott's Trap.
Yep. And then it brings us to my two favorites in the entire MCU. I went and watched Avengers Infinity War with my nephews. I have to admit, I explained this to one of my nephews that as you get older, your mind becomes number to the things that you've seen your whole life. And I've been watching superhero movies since I was a kid, going back as far as Lou Ferrigno playing the Hulk on a television series, or Christopher Reeve playing the Superman, or even the Spider-Man show that snippets that came on the Electric Company on PBS.
Remember
So
all that?
this goes back a long ways for me. So leading up to Avengers Infinity War, through that movie, I was sitting there and I wasn't really that excited, to be honest with you. I was watching it. I was like, this is a typical superhero movie. I didn't think it was bad by no means, but my mind was just numb to all this stuff. I've been seeing it for so long. The bangs and booms of action movies and the fantastical visions of superhero movies and all this stuff. But at the end of Avengers Infinity War, when I saw little kids walking out of the theater crying, that the end of that movie was so haunting when he actually snaps his fingers, and not just a few characters here and there, but they took out a lot of characters. A lot of the famous characters were dusted. Black Panther was dusted. Scarlet Witch was dusted. Spider Man was dusted. Uh, Chris Pratt's character was dusted. Drax was dusted. Almost all the Guardians were dusted. All that was left at the end of that scene was Tony Stark and Nebula after all that was over. And so I think the end of that movie, man, uh, really set me up for Avengers Endgame. I went and watched Avengers Infinity War 7 times at the theater, multiple times just by myself, because after that movie was over, I realized what a perfect, not just a movie, but a perfect piece of art that it was, and what work went in to bringing all these movies and all these characters over 11 years into the culmination that we saw in Avengers Infinity War.
Yeah, I tell you, going back to the first Guardians movie, when you first see Josh Brolin's introduction as Thanos, and you see him again at the end of Age of Ultron post credit scene. When you see Josh Brolin debut the way he did at the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, I'd read the comics. I knew what Thanos stood for, what he meant. I mean, they just changed the circumstances of why he won stones around a bit. But when he killed probably one of my top favorite characters, Loki, at the beginning, I'm like, this is, I didn't see that coming, but that told you this is going to be some serious stakes in this movie. And the thing that always stood out to me, besides seeing how Thor had to really evolve as a character to get that axe,
Yeah,
and when he got that axe, and he was the only one that could always stand toe to toe with Thanos to a degree. I mean, Iron Man did a good job, but again, it was just Thanos is on another level. But when he did the snap, and seeing everybody like that, and when the movie was over and the lights come on, there was such quiet in that theater. We were all sitting there, and I was just watching the people around me, and I'm like, they don't, they didn't get it, but I mean, they were starting to get it. But this is legit. There's not going to be any happy thing at the end of this. You're going
yeah,
to come back.
yeah, yeah. That was also one of my favorite scenes in this movie. It goes back to tying all these characters together. What a great job the Russo brothers did of taking all these characters, putting them in one movie, and each one of them played an integral part. It wasn't just like this character standing in the corner. For example, one of my favorite parts about Thor getting Stormbreaker, uh, other than Peter Dinklage playing the dwarf that forged it for him, uh, when he's looking for the handle, you got Groot, who had died in the first Guardians movie. He's a little tree sapling in a post-credit scene, and then he's Baby Groot in Guardians Volume 2, and then in Avengers Infinity War, he's Teen Groot, who's smarting everybody off, got his nose in his video game constantly. Rocket's telling him he's going to rot his brain out. He's doing nothing through the whole movie, And when they need the handle for Stormbreaker, it's when he finally comes around and reaches out and picks it up and forms his branches around it and then chops his branches off so that it has a handle. And as soon as he does that, you see the lightning come out of Thor's fingertips. That was my favorite part of that whole scene.
Yep.
Because even that character, Groot, uh, came around to try to do something to help the situation.
My favorite part of that movie is besides the interaction between Doctor Strange and Iron Man, which I could watch RDJ and
Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch snap each other off all day long. But when Thor arrives in Wakanda with that axe, and Mark Ruffalo says, "Oh, you're screwed now," it's just that set the stage for me. I was like, "What's roll? Let's get going."
Yeah. Yeah, see, all that stuff, with a lot of that stuff was things that happened during the course of that movie that I really didn't appreciate until the snap took place. And
Right.
after the snap took place, and then I realized what the stakes were, and I went back and rewatched it multiple times, then I started appreciating moments like that when, like my nephew, who was about 9 years old when we went and watched it at the theater. When Thor jumps through the up into the sky and everything goes dark, and he comes back down and slams the axe against the ground, and my nephew literally leaned forward in his seat and was like, like that. That he was 9, and then as an adult, I went back and watched some of this other stuff. I was like, yeah, that was pretty awesome if you think about it. But what made it awesome was after you realized the stakes.
Yep. Exactly right. I mean, seeing these guys have to bury the hatchet a lot of the way, and it really it didn't start taking place until the movie we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But the all the ramifications of stuff that had happened in the previous movies are still being felt even this way because Tony still didn't want to call Cap. He had a flip phone there he got from Civil War, and Ruffalo told him Banner told him he said, "Look, Thanos is coming. It doesn't matter who you're talking to." So that's
Yeah, because him and Cap had the falling out in Civil War, and yeah, all that stuff comes back. I mean, that's the amazing part. What the MCU did is every little thing that they laid down over the previous 11 years, they bring it right back around in Infinity War and Endgame.
yeah.
And with that said, let's move on to the Endgame. Waited 1 year to watch this movie. That was probably the longest year I ever spent. I called people leading up the month leading up to Endgame. I knew it was going to be huge, and I even told an uncle of mine on the phone. I was like, "You gonna go out and be a part of a pop culture event this weekend?" He's like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I was like, "It's gonna be the biggest movie to ever be out." And he was like, "You're crazy." I was like, "Wait and see." And it ended up beating Avatar.
It did.
Uh, it was the biggest blockbuster ever for the money that it made. But Avengers Endgame, man, you got all of our characters are dusted. There's a few that are left, and it's about them trying to save everybody and bring them back.
When they when you watch the beginning of that and you see how they kill Thanos, I'm like, okay. I had a feeling it was going to be a time travel thing, but I'm just like, how in the world are you going to get Thanos back involved in this when you just killed him? And they did a nice job of bringing him back through that time thing that Tony fixed up. Because where it's because I'm like, how are you going to have a big battle against Thanos when Thor just chopped his dome off? And it's just like they certainly paid that. They certainly took care of that. And again, seeing how Black Widow had to go, seeing how they all had to come together, Cap and Tony buried the hatchet, and they had to work together to be able to get this done, and seeing the payoff with him and his dad. I mean, just they paid off. I've rarely seen a movie pay off every Easter egg that they've laid for such a long period of time. These guys did it. That's incredible attention to detail. Incredible.
There were there were callbacks that, I mean, I wouldn't have even thought to put in there. Uh, for example, in Winter Soldier, when Cap and Sam Wilson first meet each other, they're out running around the Washington
You
Monument,
left.
around the pool, yeah, around the pool, and for every lap Sam completes, Super Soldier Steve Rogers is running 10. And every time he laps Sam Wilson, he gives him a little notice that he's coming on your left. So here we got Cap in Endgame. He's the only one left standing. You got Thanos' entire army. And just like when he was in the alley as a little scrawny kid getting beat up by bullies, and he stood up and said, I can do this all day. He stands up with a half broken shield, a gash down his arm. He tightens that shield around that gash in his arm, starts limping toward that army by himself, one of the greatest shots in the movie. And then he hears Sam say, on your left, and he turns and looks, and there's a portal with Black Panther walking through it. And you realize how they're bringing everybody back.
Yep. When you went that, I think the most iconic part of that movie was for me was when the scene you just described, and then at the very beginning, and then after Thanos had come back and attacked Avengers headquarters there, and Thor was standing there, and Cap and Iron Man come out, and he go, "What's he doing?" Thor says, "Absolutely nothing." He goes, "You know it's a trap, don't you?" And Iron Man says, "I pretty much don't care." And Thor said, "Good, as long as we're all clear, let's kill him properly this time." And he got both that axe and that hammer, and I think that theater about exploded whenever Cap picked up Mjolnir.
Yeah.
Thor was down. I'm like, oh man, because you knew he probably could have before. And when he did that, I mean, those three scenes probably stand out the most for me in the movie as far as just iconic and just forever immortalized in my head as far as movie history.
Yeah, that scene, I like that too when Thor's standing there and Cap and Iron Man slowly walking out there to where he's at. From there up until the point Thanos finally gets the upper hand on Cap and starts
Yeah,
shattering the shield. That whole scene is just epic.
yeah,
There's moment after moment after moment just in that scene. And then the portal scene, man. The portal scene, in my opinion, is one of the greatest event scenes in movie history. I mean, I think it's right up there with the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, where he separates the Red Sea, divides the Red Sea,
right.
as far as just epic moments in movie history. I mean, it's the entire scene, man. I mean, just the way they did it, the order in which the characters come through the portals, the fact that they had enough wherewithal that when the portal opens, through the portal, you see the location where the person was in Infinity War when they got snapped.
Right.
You got some characters coming in from Asgard or Wakanda, some coming from Asgard, the new Asgard on Earth, some coming from Titan, and that the whole time the Avengers theme music is building and building and building, and then another epic scene in that is when because when we're going to end after this discussion, Ashley. I thought we could do another video to cover everything that's come out after Endgame
That's
because
fine.
this is kind of the culmination of everything. But when Thanos attacks Avengers headquarters, and you know that Scott Lang hit the button to shrink. Well, Hulk, Rhodey, Rocket get trapped down below the rubble, and the culmination of the portal scene is when Wong or Doctor Strange says, "Is that everybody?" And Wong says, "You wanted more." And at that time, you see Ant Man start growing up out of the rubble, and you know that as he's coming up out of the rubble, he's picking up Hulk, Rocket, and Rhodey in his hands. So after he gets full size, he opens up his hand, and Rocket, Rhodey, and Groot come out. And right when the theme music finishes, Rocket's gun goes,
Yeah.
and it
I
was so great.
and the thing of it was, I really thought I didn't know if I would ever see a fight scene that would beat the airport scene in Captain America: Civil War. But when you see Scarlet Witch come in there and just hand Thanos his rear end, she just picks him up, and she would have killed him if he hadn't had told his ship to start bombing the place. And it's just and then you see Captain Marvel fighting against him. She comes there and tries to get that glove from him, and then he he headbutts her, she doesn't move. He's like, what? And then she butts him back, and finally he grabbed that power stone and knocked her out. There's just so many iconic fight scenes in that movie. It was just tremendous.
Yeah.
God.
Star Wars used to be my favorite franchise, man, but uh, after Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, the MCU became by far my favorite franchise.
I
I
agree.
hope I hope they continue on with it in a better way than Disney's handled Star Wars. I don't have a lot of confidence in them in the age that we live in with all this woke stuff and everything. But uh, if I never get anything more than the Infinity Saga, it'll go down in my head as the best continuous story that's ever came out of movie making.
Oh, best movie era ever. I mean, again, I've read the comics, but I'm here to tell you, I never thought in my lifetime, me and my other friends have talked about that we'd ever see anything like this in the big screen. We saw the television shows you talked about, the animation, the little snippets. That was as good as we could get. Seeing this stuff brought to life like that was just a surreal experience. And I never thought I'd see Surtur like in Thor Ragnarok. I never thought I'd see Thanos brought to life by these quality actors, but they pulled it off. And to see such a story paid off the way it was, look, I grew up liking Star Wars too, and I still like it, but the MCU surpassed it in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's why my we'll do that here in a little bit, but that's why my episodes that we do on Star Wars is always does it still suck a Star Wars story? Because pretty much Star Wars sucks right now. They're going to have to do a lot more to get me back, but the MCU is going to have to, they're going to have to do a lot to lose me at this point. They've done such a good job. Uh,
I agree.
I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to cover on that. Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. I marathoned all these movies leading up to Endgame over about a couple month period. When I had time, I'd watch a movie and I watched them in chronological order. Watched all the post credit scenes, and on my way from Beckley, West Virginia to Fairmont, West Virginia, to take my nephews to see Endgame. Uh, I predicted the end for Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. I looked at my wife Becky going up the road, up the interstate. I said, "I know how it's going to end." She said, "How?" I said, "Tony's going to sacrifice himself to save everybody, and Cap's always been a man out of time. He's going to get to go back and relive his life with Peggy." And when all that started going down, man, I started elbowing my nephews because I told them my prediction, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, now that's all we're going to hear from you now is you bragging about predicting it." But I mean, it was the perfect ending for both of their characters, and it goes back to what I was telling you earlier about them being basically the same character, but they were on different sides of the coin.
Right?
Uh, Tony had an awakening that made him go from the playboy billionaire that looks out only for himself to the willing to sacrifice whatever uh, to save everybody. And Cap was the exact opposite. He was sacrifice everything first, and his whole life, even after he got frozen ice and woke up in current day, he lived his life of sacrifice. Well, after it was all said and done, my favorite line in all of that, when they look over and see old man Steve Rogers sitting on that bench, and he goes over there. You have to know the Tony Stark character is played by Robert Downey Jr. to understand this. But Sam asked him, he says, "So did something go wrong or did something go right?" And Steve says, "Well, after I put all the stones back, I decided to get me some of that life Tony was always trying to tell me to go get." And what if you think about that, you can hear Tony Stark saying, "Get a life, Cap."
Yeah. I mean, I think probably how they paid it. The two things again, there's so many different things in that movie to discuss, but whenever the big fight scene, and he had just gotten the glove back, and then Iron Man comes over there and he knocks him down, and he turns that glove on, and Thanos says, "I am inevitable." And he turns around and snaps it, and he looks at his hand. There's no stones. He looked over at Iron Man, and to go back to the first Iron Man movie, he goes, "And I am Iron Man." And then it just everybody's mouth just dropped in the movie because you didn't see that coming. Then you started seeing everybody snapped and everything, but and then at the very end when you see and they even had something that even in the movie called Endgame, they still had something where they said something going forward in the future. They had Loki steal the Tesseract, and
Yeah,
when they went back to 2012 and setting up his character going forward again on another arc, and and then to have Robert Redford come back and say, "Look, my last appearance in film is going to be in Endgame," and he reprised Alexander Pierce character from 2012, and then to see all that the montage at the very end. I mean, it was just a well done. I can't see it. I haven't seen another movie done as well done in terms of taking a story from beginning to end and putting a nice bow on it.
I agree, man. It's right up there for me, and it would be at least top 10 favorite movies of all time, if not top five. I mean, I was so impressed after watching it. What a great job they did, man. It just you can't stress it enough. I know you probably deal with it too, but you try to tell people they should watch this or watch that, and if it has anything to do with comic book characters
They're
or
not
anything,
interested.
they just dismiss it. It's like, man, you don't even you don't know what you're missing, man. I mean, it tells such a great story, and you can appreciate it just for the work that goes into it. I mean, when I'm watching movies and they're done that well, I'm sitting there considering the fact that you had writers that came up with a story from source material, which were comic books. They had to write down a story. It had to be converted into a screenplay. Producer had to gather funds, hire all the people that would take this screenplay and convert it into a visual art form that you're watching on a big screen that's telling a story. Then you have set designers, actors that have to be hired. The director has to tell all these people working on set he wants this that way, that this way. Then you have the CGI people, and for all of that to come out into a product like Avengers Endgame was, just how perfect like the portal scene was, and to just think how much work goes in to bringing. We can't even do it without messing up our audio somehow. And imagine the work that goes into putting something like Avengers Endgame on the big screen. I mean, if you can't appreciate it for the story and the characters, you can appreciate it at least for that.
It's to be able to squeeze so many people in a movie like that. It's just a name from the past to now. It's just I don't think it's a feat that'll ever be duplicated in modern cinema ever again.
I don't either. There's too many agendas working now. There's no freedom for creators to do what they want to do. But we're not going to get into all that. This video went way longer than we expected, but the MCU is a big topic. I I I kind of hoped we would do it in 30 minutes or less. Kind of knew we wouldn't. So
Yeah,
we'll put out another video that'll upload. This one will upload next Friday night, uh, but we'll do one the following Friday. Will be uploaded where we'll talk about everything that's come out in the MCU since Avengers Endgame. We'll talk about the Loki series, the What If series, the WandaVision series, uh, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Hawkeye. And then one that's coming out here soon, Moon Knight.
sounds good.
Uh, which reminds me, did you notice in the Doctor Strange 2 trailer that one of the multiverses he comes in contact with is animated?
I didn't notice that, but I did notice that there a certain voice from the Illuminati, and you're not familiar with what the Illuminati is.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar. I don't
And
read comics, but I watch comic book nerds on YouTube. So,
well, you know who that voice I'm talking about is.
oh yeah, I know who it is.
And if they have some of the people appear on there that's rumored to be, this Doctor Strange movie is going to be insane.
We can talk about that in the future, but yeah, I was just wanting to ask you if you'd seen. That's why you should watch a guy named Eric Voss with the new rock stars on YouTube. He
Right.
breaks these trailers and things down really well. There's one scene in the trailer where Doctor Strange is crashing through this world where you can see dinosaurs in the
Yeah, I
background.
saw that.
And
Yeah.
as he's going through there, his left shoulder hits something, and it's an animated multiverse. So the What If series may actually be a multiverse all of its own that's animated.
Well, if you think about it, that the evil Doctor Strange that they show in the trailer is basically taken from the animated show What if you recall.
Maybe, maybe.
I believe it probably is. It's too coincidental. It's too close to most recently coming out. Just my opinion, though.
We'll see. You might be right, but what if he's a different one? A
Well,
different evil
like I said,
Doctor
there's
Strange.
variants. We both know from the show we're going to discuss next time that there's variants for everybody out there.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy, man. The multiverse.
It is.
All right, all right, man. We're going to end this video. Remember, YouTube. Sign up for YouTube account. Look up Armchair Fandom. Subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell. Hit the like button. Leave a comment in the comment section below. You can find us on Facebook at the Facebook group Armchair Fandom. You can find us on Twitter at armchair_fandom. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.
Later.